because it's dark, but all the water got sucked out of it. Well, now, as you can see, that's what they call storm surge. It is now surging back in because we're getting we're getting a wind right from the Gulf, right from the west, as the backside of this storm comes through and it counter-rotates, it counterclockwise rotates. Now we're getting it right in the face off the Gulf. That's pushing this water, and I don't know, Bob, can you walk over here with me? It's pushing the water through this pass and into the bays. So listen, we're not done with this yet. It's not going to be as catastrophic as it was in the Keys by any means, or even in Naples. But I tell you, we're not done with this storm yet. It's still wailing pretty good, as you can see.
It is indeed. It's still a Category 1. And, Jeff, do they have any estimate now what the storm surge might be? Because they had said it might be 5 or 10 feet, which would be a big problem.
It would be a problem. I don't think we're going to get that intensity because, again, we're on the backside of the storm. But at the same time, you know, as you can see, I don't know, Bob's, you come up. Oh, whoa, that's sand there. I don't know if he can get up here. Can you get up on top of it, Bob? If you can, will you show him the other? Oh, there you are. Sorry. There you go. I got your hand. Okay. Yeah, he's up on his knees. Sorry. But look, here's the surge coming into the rocks here. Now, typically, yesterday, you could see sand out there. Now, you can see water. This is where it typically would be. But we're just now starting to get the surge in here. So where it goes from here, I don't know. As I said, I don't think, Steve, it'll be as intense as if we had gotten a direct hit from this, since this is the backside.
Jeff, what about high tide? Is it already?
Yeah, that's this morning. That's okay. The other factor. I'm glad you brought that up because that is the other factor. We're expecting high tide here between 6 and 9, depending on where exactly you are along the coast in the Tampa Bay area. And just so you know, for those who don't know what Madeira Beach is, this is a barrier island that is off St. Pete, which is, of course, east of Tampa. So Tampa is actually a little bit protected. It's these barrier islands that are going to take the bulk of the crap here.
How did you get there? Is there a bridge?
Yeah, well, there are bridges, and, you know, well, you probably can't see it because it's behind me, but there's a bridge that goes from Madeira Beach across to Treasure Island, for those who may know the geography down here. And there are bridges to all of this, and those bridges, even though they cut them off to, you know, regular folks, fools like us, they'll let us in. So, yeah, the bridges are open.
The bridges are open, and so is Jeff Flock describing what's going on down there in Madeira Beach in the Tampa St. Pete area.
Right. Jeff, it's okay to put your hood on now.
Laura, listen, this is the signs we're seeing all over the Cape this morning. This is a very large tree. As you can see, it's been uprooted. It has been blocking the roadway. It's been tipped over. We're still experiencing watch out for that stop sign, Akeem. Watch out for that sign. We're still seeing very strong wind gusts. Right now, that stop sign right there, you see it, is being knocked loose. It was knocked loose last night, obviously, by the stronger winds. And this morning, large wind gusts are coming out, and they are battering stuff again. So that's the concern. That's why we don't want you out here right now. In fact, we're probably going to go inside.
Allison, good morning from Miami, where most people are breathing a sigh of relief as the sun prepares to rise here. We know we have many uprooted trees, many people still without power. But we know this could have been far worse, considering the forecast was showing a direct hit to the Miami metro area just a few days ago. Our true concern is for our friends and my constituents in the Florida Keys. Of course, they took a direct hit, and only after the sun rises today will we know exactly what the extent of the damage is. There are a lot of rumors circulating as to what may have happened in the Florida Keys, but authorities just don't know. I'm hoping to get an airlift to the Florida Keys later today to get on the ground there and help that community, those communities, because really every island is a community in and of itself, to help them start rebuilding and recovering. We know that FEMA is already attempting to move into the area. The U.S. Coast Guard is attempting to return to the Florida Keys since they completely evacuated. And we're just anxious to get down to many of the local heroes who remain there, first responders who voluntarily decided to stay, and of course emergency managers and some residents who decided to stay. But this was a historic storm for that area, and we're anxious to get down there and see exactly what happened and how we can begin to help.
Well, Congressman, we talked to one of those folks, one of the experts who stayed behind so he could get information out to the state. He's a NOAA meteorologist. He hunkered down in the NOAA bunker there, and he gave us some information that does sound dire. I mean, he said that people in the Keys right now are without electricity, they are without water, they are without cell service or internet, and the bridges connecting them to the mainland and to civilization and the roadways have been blocked or partially washed away. I mean, it just sounds like they are truly marooned. So what will you do to get them, back on the grid?
Well, the first thing we have to do is coordinate logistics, and obviously a lot of relief materials are going to arrive by air as soon as we can ensure that the airports there are safe for aircraft to land. Also, Secretary Mattis, before the storm hit, pledged to have the Department of Defense support these efforts, so we may see a lot of supplies arriving by naval vessel or by sea. The Coast Guard can also be helpful in that regard. And that is the challenge, Allison. I get questions a lot of times in Congress, is it tough to service the Florida Keys? Under normal circumstances, it is, because it's a long island chain, and there's only one road in and one road out. Imagine now, after the pass of a historic storm of this nature. And, Allison, another thing I'll say about the Keys, a lot of people think about the Keys in the context of tourism and boating, and people who live there part of the year and live up north during the summer. But the Florida Keys, there's some very close-knit communities there. Everyone knows each other on these small islands, and I have no doubt that they will recover quickly with the help of the federal government, the state government, and obviously so many local governments from all over the country, starting here in Miami-Dade and as far as Texas and California, who have pledged to help this area. This is one of the signature parts of our country. A lot of people from all over the world travel to the United States to visit the Florida Keys. And we will help them recover, and the Florida Keys will recover.
Absolutely. People have so much affection for that area because they vacation there, and Jimmy Buffett, et cetera, et cetera. Congressman, thank you very much for taking the time to update us on what the needs are. You, too. So, Chris, I mean, you hear they're waiting for the Coast Guard and for Navy vessels. As we heard General Honore say, they are on their way to get there for all sorts of needed supplies.
Yeah, I mean, at least 5 major vessels are going to be coming this way. But look, another indication, this storm is not over. But I'll tell you right now, you talk about tender mercies and small blessings. Dave, pan up. This is something every Floridian wants to see as the haze burns off and the sun starts to rise this morning. A clear sky. Everybody has been looking up at this wall of white and these waves of rain. It's still going on elsewhere. Here in Naples, where they got one of the fastest gusts ever recorded here. This is our reality. But look at Daytona Beach. That is the reality for people right now. Hurricane Irma still pouring down. Category 1, 75-mile-an-hour winds, battering parts of this state that were not ready for it. We have the latest next.
For a little bit till these winds die down, because something like this stop sign right here could be knocked loose and could hit you in the face, could hit you and seriously injure you. We're seeing roofs off of buildings in some parts, but mainly we're seeing a lot of trees, not a lot of damage to houses this morning. That's the good news. We'll, of course, keep you updated. Power is still out in a lot of Cape Coral. In Cape Coral, I'm John Treeweiler. Wink News now.
All right, John, thank you. This flooding is at Sherwood Community in Lehigh Acres at the corner of State Road 82 and Lee Boulevard. Take your attention to the white car back there. The water is almost completely covering the tires.
And flooding in Estero at Copper Oaks. Take a look at this. The water going into the garages there. This was sent in by Wink News viewer through the Wink News Facebook page. And now Wink News reporter Michelle Kingston is on Marco Island, one of the definitely hit parts of our area. Michelle, how are things looking out there?
we finally made it here. It took us quite a while to get here from our hotel in Naples. We went over the bridge, came a little bit down South Collier Boulevard, and we were greeted with this, a big tree blocking the road here. And when we first pulled up, we thought it was just this tree, but Karina, if you come a little further, closer over here, we'll show them. It's not just one tree. Look, the whole road is covered in these trees right here. It's just an incredible sight to see, just to see how strong Hurricane Irma really did come through Marco Island. Now, I'm sure you guys have all seen the videos that have been sent in from viewers here during the storm last night. As you can see, it's still very dark here, and we just arrived, so we're still not able to see a lot of the damage, but this is, of course, what we saw when we first showed up here. Now, it is starting to get a little bit lighter, so we're going to be able to get a better look shortly. But I can tell you, we are hearing an emergency siren over here at a condo building. Of course, power is out here, so that could be why we're hearing that. And there were Marco Island police right at the bottom of the bridge there that were telling us to be very careful. Of course, we are able to drive out here, but they cautioned us. They said it is very dangerous, flooding, and of course, tons of trees down, a lot of debris on the road. You can show them right here. This is what we saw the entire drive down here. And actually, I shot some cell phone videos so you guys could see it if you want to pull that up now, just in our drive here. I'll try to remember the streets we were on. My photographer might have to remind me, but we were on Airport Pulling Road, we were on 41, and then Collier Boulevard in order to get here to Marco. And we saw power lines down, we saw street lights down, poles in the middle of the road, and of course those trees. It was, again, just very incredible to see, and very emotional too. You know, so many people move here to Southwest Florida because it is such a beautiful place to live, and to see it like this is just so devastating. Now we're going to go ahead and keep driving around here and hopefully be able to bring you some more live video and show you what we're seeing down here, guys.
All right, Michelle, thank you so much. Please stay safe out there. Your safety is #1 priority, but thanks for bringing us that live report. It's the first time we're seeing anything from Marco Island.
One
Right,
still
and,
battering
Marco Island, would you
parts
say
of
that's
northern
one of the
Florida right now. So many not out of danger. 5.7 million, maybe even more now, without power. Who knows for how long? Now, one of the stories of what's been going on here is about the first responders. We kept telling you, listen, once the storm gets above 40 miles an hour of sustained wind, they can't get out. And that is the truth, because it's too dangerous to them. But you know what? They were doing it anyway, proving once again why they are the best of us who go out to save the rest of us. Ignatius Carroll is with the Miami Fire Department. They had to get into it early and often yesterday. Can you hear me now, sir?
Yes, I can. Good morning.
I mean, it is amazing to think. We believed that the storm was going to spare us in Miami, you know, that it would just be a glancing blow. But what a soaking, and the wind and the cranes. What did you have to deal with yesterday?
Well, you can, as like you said, storms can be unpredictable, but what we had to deal with was not being able to respond to some of the rescue calls when people call 911, so you can imagine how challenging it was to us. But having to give them instructions on what to do until we were capable of responding. And once the winds died down a little bit, allowing us to respond, then that's what we did.
Well, it's one thing to talk somebody through what to do about storm surge and how to stay safe. It's another thing to talk someone through a pregnancy. But that's what you had to do yesterday. Tell me that story.
Well, one of the calls with our 911 dispatcher was assisting a young lady who was pregnant. She called earlier, and we were unable to get to her, but they kind of coached her on what she needed to do. And then later on, she called again, and they assisted with the delivery and even took it further, having to get in contact with an actual OBGYN doctor to provide additional assistance, as well as, I believe, a pediatric doctor to tell the mother and family members what they needed to do when the baby was already delivered, to care for it until first responders could get to it.
How is the baby? How's the mom?
We understand right now that they're doing great. We definitely have to do a follow-up here at the chief's office, but we're just curious to know, what did they name the baby?
Absolutely, right? You know, it's always interesting to know. Was it a little boy or a little girl? Do we know?
That I don't know.
All right, if it's a boy, it's tough to get stuck with the name Irma. You know, we all know the Johnny Cash song, Boy Named Sue. Didn't work out well for him. Hopefully this little baby is healthy. You made it happen by talking her through. Talk about a moment of need. Thank you so much for all that you have done and all we know you're going to get out there and do today. Please use us as a resource. Let us know what information has to get out, and we'll do our best to help.
And we appreciate everything you guys are doing as well. Thank you for keeping us all informed as well.
You know, they were worried. The governor was saying the governor has a home here, and that wasn't fueling his concern. It was the vulnerability because it's just not far above sea level. It's spongy, so it can't take much water. And then yesterday, they wound up getting hit with these winds. And I know that you have some of the footage of it, but I tell you, nobody saw it coming. And even people who have stood in plenty of storms like me and Ed Lavandera, we never expected anything like that. It was like a fire hose of air and wind. Here, take a look at what we lived through yesterday, literally for hours.
And still, we're waiting on the storm surge. And these gusts are the real deal. There's a benefit for us to be here is that when this is done, as you know, we're going to go out with search and rescue and we're going to volunteer our time and we're not working. Oh, there are those gusts you're talking about. And it's going to be good to know where the worst of it seems to be going. Right, the branches are starting to come off this tree next to us. It was only a matter of time. She's starting to let go, fellas.
The wind is just too dangerous, and it's really the lack of visibility. We can barely see 100 yards in either direction. And obviously with the winds blowing at this speed, if there is debris flying through the air, I don't want to be out in the middle of that and get caught upside the head by some flying branch or anything like that.
Some of these big trees that are surrounding this hotel, I don't know if they're going to make it. They're starting to cleave out. That's why I just grabbed the producer and put it back inside.
You likely will be fine second and third floor, but get everybody off the street.
All right. Hey, Chad, water's coming up this street here. I don't know if you can see it. Dave, show it to him. This just like is coming out of nowhere. All of a sudden, this street is flooded. Do you see it?
Yes, absolutely.
This is something that they're going to remember for a really long time.
Okay, Chris, it was remarkable to watch your reporting yesterday. I couldn't turn away. I watched you for hours, but it was a little misleading, Chris, because you have such good balance and ballast that you weren't being knocked off your feet by the wind like so many other people. I would have been blown into a tree had I been standing on that balcony. But you just stood there and you were just, I mean, we could see how intense the wind was, but you weren't being batted around by it as much as so many other people.
All right, first, let's unpack what you just said. One, it's preposterous to imagine you in a situation like that because you're too valuable. We would never put you in a situation like that. I don't want you to, I don't want you to talk to anybody in a situation like that, let alone be in one. You matter too much to us. And also, ballast is a nice way of calling me fat, Allison. That's what you just did. You called me ballast. I'm 220 pounds. Ed Lavandera and I were built to stand still in a storm. Those winds were the real deal. Thank God. Everything that needed to survive did. But we'll bring you more coverage of what happened here in Naples and what's still going on all over the state of Florida when Allison and I return right after this.
Going through these all morning as they come flooding into our Wink newsroom, and a lot of you will be returning home to significant damage once you do today, with cleanup many days ahead. This is video I want to show you sent in from Wink News viewer Lindsay Dowdy. She left her home in Island Park. Remember, that was one of the areas that was hit hard already by all of the flooding before Hurricane Irma. Now, Lindsay decided to ride out the storm at her family's house in Bonita Springs. Take a look. This used to be a parking overhang. And I know it's a little bit pixely. That's because this is cell phone footage sent to us. But that overhang has just completely been destroyed. And all of those panels coming really close to the homes. Again, this neighborhood in Bonita Springs, and also lots of the cars underneath that structure now have damage. I'm going to show you some pictures as well. Wink News reporter John Treeweiler snapped these. He's been covering the storm in Cape Coral for the past couple of days. Take a look. This is as Hurricane Irma was so strong. And actually, these are photos I was hoping would be from John, but these are actually sent to us from Collier County. Okay, there we go. This is from John Treeweiler. This is a Auto Center on Cape Coral Parkway, a very popular roadway in the Cape, so an issue many of you will have if you're traveling through that anytime soon. But you can see the roof was just completely torn down from that, obviously, as those winds were making its way through the storm time in Cape Coral. The next photo I want to show you is exactly the reason why we told you and why you were forced to evacuate any sort of mobile home during the storm time. We're going to get that picture up for you in just a couple of seconds. But what you're about to see is the roofs on those mobile homes just completely torn off. All of those panels, again, could have been really dangerous as they were flying around. And, you know, lots of people are going to be returning to significant damage and days of cleanup. Back to you.
All right, Jessica, thank you very much.
You saw that at the end there. We did want to, within the
And
last
as the
half an hour,
storm
we
moves
wanted to
north,
let you know that
the numbers only grow. We know that 6 million people had to be evacuated. Over 150,000 are still in shelters, and with good reason. In Jacksonville, a place that was not supposed to see any major action from Irma, they've already set a storm surge record. They broke a 1964 mark from Hurricane Dora. That is the kind of history you don't want to make. We have Allison is in New York. We have Anderson is in Tampa. We have John, who is in Miami. And we are here in Naples, where they saw some major gusting of wind and storm surge that certainly changed the reality for far too many people here. It's good to have everybody here to talk about what happened, but what is happening matters just as much. Sarah Seidner is in Daytona Beach. Let's get to her because they are getting hit with the winds right now, and that's another place, Sarah, wasn't supposed to see Irma in any serious way, but you're getting smacked right now.
It wasn't supposed to be like this. At least it wasn't forecasted to be like this. But Irma has been a particularly ornery, if you will, storm. It's kind of made her own way through this state, but certainly hitting the entire state. Finally, it's daylight. We have been up all night, and these winds have been ferocious. They've been punishing. They've been strong enough to knock us over. I've got my producer holding the light. I've got my cameraman bracing the camera. But now we have daylight, and now the storm is starting to go away, except for you have blue skies, and we aren't anywhere near those blue skies just yet. What you are seeing, though, right there is, look at those waves. These are not typical waves on Daytona Beach. This is the place where people love to come fun and stun. You can take the young kids out there when it's not spring break. When it's spring break, you've got a whole bunch of college kids that loved coming out here. What you're seeing now is a really, really angry sea that has been whipped up by these winds and huge waves all the way back. As far as the eye can see, you can see whitecaps on very large waves coming in. What is the good news is we are not seeing the same kind of flooding that we saw during Hurricane Matthew, which was just a year ago. We were standing just down there on the boardwalk when Hurricane Matthew was coming through, and it was covered in water. The owners of the boardwalk businesses there told us that they took a truckload of sand out of their businesses for Hurricane Matthew. What will Irma bring to their businesses? What kind of damage did the sustained winds that no one was really expecting to show up here in Daytona Beach do? That remains to be seen. But I do want to talk about the fact that first responders risked their own lives to try to save 20 to 25 people that were here. They decided to stay. They didn't think it was going to get this bad. There were tropical force storm winds, yes, but they didn't expect hurricane force winds. Not over here, not on the East Coast, 225 miles from the eye when it was hitting, for example, Tampa. They thought we're fine, and then suddenly here they are dealing with hurricane force winds. They were rescued, and we're very proud of those first responders, but it's just an example that when they say shelter in place, even if you think the storm is gone, you got to listen to authorities. Chris?
Sarah, it's actually Anderson here in Tampa talking about those first responders. I want to talk to Police Chief Craig Capri in Daytona Beach just to get a sense of what he and his officers have been doing and have been seeing now just as dawn begins to break. Chief, appreciate you joining us. Obviously, you're still probably assessing the situation in Daytona Beach. I'm wondering what you have seen so far out there, what kind of things you've been responding to.
You know, we had a call from some people in one of our apartment complexes in the lower lying area there along the intercoastal calling for help. We went down there with myself, city manager, and the sheriff. We all went down there. We were rescued about 25 people with the high water trucks we had and got them out of there. They were just a little nervous, upset with the flood waters. But we got everybody out okay, and nobody was really injured, thank God.
In terms of the flooding that you've seen, again, we just heard Sarah Seidner talk about how the storm was not expected to hit Daytona Beach in the way that it did, to affect it in the way that it did. You've seen flooding there before. How did it compare this time to just the last time?
A lot better. I mean, we were out a couple hours before, in the early morning hours, and it was fine. And then some tides coming in, and the storm really just hit us between that, midnight to about that 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and that just caused that water to rise real fast. It goes to show you how quick these things can turn on you. But we got some water damage down there, but nobody's hurt, like I said, and that's the only area right now that appears to be flooded in our city. The beach side looks really good. A lot of the streets look good. A lot of debris in the roadways is clear. I think that's because of Matthew. Last year, we cleared most of that stuff out, and we're just not seeing it right now.
So for
do some search, see if anybody needs any help, and try to get them some help. All of my officers are going out in the streets right now. The winds have died down tremendously. They're probably around 35, 40 right now, so we're going to go back out and see if we can help some people. That's what we do.
Yeah, and we're very thankful that you do that. Thank you, Chief Capri. Appreciate your time. Wish you the best. All your officers have been working around the clock over the last couple of days. Chris, the situation in Tampa, certainly the big concern here for all of yesterday really was the potential for storm surge, the potential, obviously, for hurricane force winds. The winds did not get as high into the triple digits as they had feared, as some of the models had shown as early as 2 days ago, and even early yesterday morning. We have been watching the water come back in. It's really actually much higher now on the Hillsborough River than it was this time the morning yesterday. As you know, we watched all that water being sucked out. That water has all returned. Plus, we're still waiting to get figures on storm surge and the situation with flooding. As you know, Tampa, even in heavy rainfall, has areas that floods. Officers are now, we've been seeing police going out. They're basically assessing any kind of damage. We'll obviously bring you any reports of that as they come in.
All right, Anderson, I mean, obviously the job just beginning for those first responders, and for a lot of them, they're still not able to get going because the storm is still pounding. Storm surge, the story in Tampa, the story here in Naples. But let's get to Chad Myers because, again, people are waking up this morning and saying, oh, what did Irma do? No, it's what is she doing? What are you seeing right now?
The center of circulation north of Tampa by about 60 miles. In fact, 70 miles west of Sarah Seidner in Daytona. So nowhere near the eye, and we saw overnight what she was going through. Honestly, 80 or 90 mile per hour gusts. Here's the center of circulation as we push water onshore here, bring it back down and push it toward Anderson, the center right about there. So this is the story. The storm surge across the northeast coast of Florida into Georgia about 8 feet because the water has been piling up for so very long. Because the eye went just to the east of Tampa, the surge in and the eye is so far gone. You didn't really get the surge in Tampa like we had in Marco or like we had in Naples, which went up about 8.5 feet in about 15 minutes. So that was pretty significant. But the story today is Jacksonville, Daytona, St. Augustine, to Brunswick. Wow, I had about 5 more minutes worth of stuff to say about this forecast, but Anderson, I got to toss it back to you. We'll get back to me in a little bit.
Chad, thanks very much. 3 feet of storm surge, Chad saying that is much less than expected. They were anticipating here in Tampa 5 to 8 feet, fearful of 5 to 8 feet. But again, 3 feet in a city like Tampa, some areas no doubt will be flooded. And we can see this river is much higher, is a couple of feet higher than it should be in a normal day. I want to go to Bryn Gingras, who's over in Orlando, where the winds have been pretty strong even now. Bryn, what are you seeing?
Yeah, Anderson, I'm curious what Chad has to say as far as the wind gusts here in Orlando, because we are getting
strong ones. In fact, the sign that is above our hotel, if you imagine sort of an enormous circular coffee table size sign, that just got blown off and right into practically our live shot. My producer right now is hunkered behind a pillar, and my photographer behind a statue at this point. If you could see, if I turn my body to it, I'm like a parachute to the wind. That's how strong these gusts are. That's kind of why I'm staying towards the camera, because I have to have some sort of strength. And now we just had a big awning. If you heard that crash, Anderson, a huge awning from our hotel just shattered down as we're talking right now. So it's not over here. That's the point. I got to mention that right now, as we're talking, there are rescue efforts going on right now with the National Guard and the Orange County Fire and Rescue. Just west of where we are, there were 24 homes that got flooded very severely. Everyone in there had to be rescued. So can you imagine those emergency personnel trying to get everyone out of their homes safely as these winds are so strong? John?
I'll take it, Bryn. Be careful out there. You know, once that wind gets you. JB, sorry about that, bud. I stepped on you. Look, you know Bryn's reality as well or better than anyone. For you down there, Miami was supposed to be spared. Not only did it get spanked, but the duration. Every time I would look at the coverage, you were either going to somebody or dealing yourself with just interminable waves of wind and rain.
It was hours upon hours upon hours of wind above tropical storm force, above hurricane force for a period of time. 100-mile-an-hour gusts at the tops of these high rises. We had those 2 crane collapses. And Chris, where I'm standing right now is Brickell, the Brickell neighborhood. Brickell, I tell you how weird it is here this morning. Just flat out, we are starting to see a few cars go by, but normally at this time, this place would be packed. This is the financial district of Miami right now. As I said, Brickell Ave, yesterday it might as well have been Brickell River, where I'm standing, covered in 4 feet of water. This was the area that had the storm surge higher than 5 feet. It came from over there. Biscayne Bay is over there. It pushed up over the seawalls and just came gushing to where I'm standing right now. And then as far back as you can see and down that road, walk down the street. And as we've been walking through here this morning, we got car alarms going off. We got building alarms going off. It is just incredibly strange. No one going back. A few people you've seen driving by coming in to check out the damage, maybe seeing if they can get home. Officials here say just wait. Let them clean up. Let them clean up what they can. But Miami, I think that they feel like they missed the brunt of the storm. It wasn't a Category 5 eyewall impact. They were surprised by how long they had to sustain their resistance and really the damage. They're just getting a sense of what it's like here this morning. 1 million people still without power. Let's go up north now, where the storm, again, is still hitting. Hurricane Irma nowhere near done. Kaylee Hartung in Gainesville. Kaylee.
John, we've been standing by for the 6 to 7 o'clock hour here in Gainesville, where the worst of Irma was expected. Well, I'll tell you, if that last hour was supposed to be the worst, then you really have to feel like Gainesville. Based on what we saw or what we didn't see here, it supports the idea that this storm is starting to break up. Local officials tell me they are concerned that in the next hour there could be a little bit of activity, maybe as we catch the tail end of the storm here, but no such 75-mile-an-hour hurricane winds that were feared here. And yet the gusts that have come through here overnight and in the early morning hours, they've been enough to topple trees all over town. I'm told about half of the city's traffic lights are out. More than 80,000 people in